Everyone thinks they need to be smart to work in this industry in clinical research, and yeah, you do. It doesn't hurt to be smart. Really, what you need are these 5 unexpected skills that nobody ever talks about. So, we're going to go in depth on these skills right now on this podcast. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Roll the intro. Welcome back to my channel, Guru Nation. Listen, we try to do things nobody else does. First of all, I really appreciate your support. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. And if you're watching this in the future and I'm already at 100K, then I'm trying to get to 1 million, right? But right now, let's worry about 100K. I really appreciate you. Subscribe, like, comment, share. These are 5 unexpected skills you need in clinical research. Everybody thinks that people who work in this industry need to be cut from a certain cloth, that everyone who works in this industry need to be introverts, need to be nerdy, need to be obsessed with data and obsessed with statistics. And those things don't hurt. And those are things that you may learn over time. I'm a perfect example. I was not obsessed with any of that stuff. I was a entrepreneur that got into this space. I was somebody who, fresh out of college, I was a pre-med student. I ended up graduating with a science degree, but I didn't really like the degree. I just did it because it was the thing to do, because I thought I would be a doctor. And then after I didn't get into med school, I thought I would be a pharmacist. And when I didn't get into pharmacy school, I thought I could go to osteopathy school. I was always an entrepreneur. I just didn't know it. And so I had these inclinations that served me well in this industry. And Monica Quitiva, shout out to her, who's a co-owner and co-founder of the Clinical Research Coordinator Academy, the CRC Academy, she came up with this slogan that no matter what your background is, there is a spot for you in clinical research. And it's so true. You could be a marketer. You could be like Daniel Rodriguez, who's behind the cameras here. You'll see him at SOS if you come. A videographer. You can get, like, if he wanted to get into research, he probably could, using his skill set to get into a research site or get into a company that wanted to get started in clinical research. Maybe it's a vendor. Whatever your skill set is or are, there is room for you in this industry. So just because you're not science minded, just because you're not obsessed with statistics or data, doesn't mean there's not a career for you in this industry. And just because you are, doesn't guarantee that you're going to do well in this industry either, especially in the era of artificial intelligence, where, even if you're the best biostatistician in the world, who's better than you? AI in that field. Better than you in data, statistics, AI. You can't beat AI. And AI is going to be part of our industry going forward, part of every industry going forward. We're actually going to do a whole nother video, probably next week or the week after, about the top trends in tech going into clinical research. But for you people watching and listening, we got to break down these misconceptions about who can get into research. These are the skills you actually need. And I'm going to go through them right now. And there's actually subsets to this. So the first one is communication. Communication is key. And what is that? This is an industry ultimately about working with people. It's whether you're at a site, it's pretty obvious. If you're at a research site, you are working with people in the form of study participants. That is the most important. That is the reason why we're doing what we do in the first place, is to improve outcomes for me, for you, for anyone watching. We need study participants, and we need happy study participants in order to do our jobs well in clinical research, or else without them, there is no industry. You can have all the technology you want. I talked about this in a live stream the other day with Brad and Jess Thompson. Just because a technology is able to do something doesn't mean it's a good idea to introduce into a study. We have to keep in mind patient centricity, doing what's best for the patient. So communication by far number one skill set. And a lot of you nerds out there, you data nerds, you biostatisticians, people that are highly educated, think that you don't need good communication skills because your education is going to take you far. And that's not necessarily true. That's actually decreasingly true the more that AI develops and gets involved. What is going to be needed is precisely communication skills. And one of the first books I ever read in my fledgling career as an entrepreneur is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I read this book in college mainly because I was in a new town and I knew nobody there, and so I was trying to how to win friends, like literally what the book cover says. But as I started reading it, I started thinking, I could apply this to, because I was always entrepreneurial minded, I could apply this to anything. If I want to sell something, if I want to convince my professor that I deserve a passing grade when I really didn't have one. I've done this, by the way. Like, there are things you can do as far as communication to influence and to persuade. Another good book that I read on this is by Robert Cialdini. Unfortunately, he went to ASU. He's an ASU professor. But it's called Influence. And I know he wrote another book after that. I haven't read it, but Influence is like a staple for this topic. And I think it behooves all of us in this space to improve our communications. Because again, even if you're not working with patients, if you're at a site, it's obvious you're going to be working with patients, but it goes further. So this is ultimately about people. This is a people business. So if you're a CRC, if you're a CRA, if you're a CTM, you've got to work not only with the patients, you got to work with their families, you have to work with physicians, you have to work with sponsors, and you have to work with fellow research professionals. And one of the fastest ways to accelerate your own career is by networking. And networking is part of communication. And if you're someone that's an introvert, you really have to work on it. But as a former introvert myself, I can tell you that it's possible. I would say I was an introvert in high school, and I came out of my shell like towards the end of my college career. And so by the time I started working, I was kind of an extrovert already. But if I could do it, I know you can do it too. Like I was preferred to just be by myself, read books, just talk to a few people I know. I wasn't the kind, and I'm still not really the kind to go to a party where you don't know anyone and start talking to everybody there like you know them. Like, I could kind of do that now, and I think it's because of the entrepreneurial background that I have. These last 20 years of basically doing this, it's become second nature. But I still prefer to just be by myself and be alone. And so I think at my heart, I'm still introvert, although all the aptitude tests tell me otherwise. But I think that's because of what I've been doing the last 20 years. So I've taught myself how to communicate better, and I could still do better. I'm now a manager of coordinators, and I have to also watch what physicians are doing as far as patient oversight, patient safety oversight. I talk to providers, nurse practitioners, physicians, specialists. They're not the easiest people to communicate with. Some of them, you only have like 30 seconds to convey a message. Like when I call one of my doctors who's a PI, they're busy. I need to tell them what the monitor is complaining about in 30 seconds so that they know when the monitor talks to them, they're already up to speed. And so I can't just call them and then go on a diatribe about random things. I got to get straight to the point. I got to be precise in my communication. So I think some of the books you could be reading are How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then another book, like I said, is Influence by Robert Cialdini. You have to be able to build trust with people in this space, and that's part of networking. If you are not actively involved on LinkedIn as a clinical research professional, as of the time of this video, which is January 2025, you are doing yourself a disservice. There are disproportional benefits to the time you put in if you put it in properly, as far as what LinkedIn can provide for your career. So, and I don't mean spamming people messages. I mean effective communication, which actually means listening more. And a lot of you introverts out there, you might be good at that. Hey, you listen all the time. Well, it's about putting yourself in the other's shoes. So even when you're looking for a job, let's say you've been a coordinator and you're ready to, maybe a sponsor you saw is hiring for a project manager. Well, did you know that coordinators are essentially project managers? And we're going to get into this skill set later on in this video. Coordinators essentially are project managers. Like if you are running a study at a site as a coordinator, you are effectively a project manager. You just don't know it, and you don't know how to speak that lingo. But when you distill it to first principles, the tasks that you are doing, you are project management. So you should communicate this on your resume. And that's what effective communication is. It's not just speaking in person. It's not just doing videos like this or doing podcasts or writing comments on LinkedIn or messaging people or emailing people or talking to people at conferences. It also translates to how do you present your LinkedIn profile, which is your digital CV, your digital resume, but also on your actual resume, your actual CV. How is the employer supposed to know by reading your CV within 2 to 5 seconds? Because that's how long it takes. How long the average employer looks at a resume for before they move on. 2 to 5 seconds. So if you've been a coordinator and you want to be a project manager, and you want to be a project manager, and you know the job you're applying for as project manager, why is those words either not on your CV anywhere or buried somewhere where it's going to take someone a few minutes to find it? You shouldn't. You need to reverse engineer, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and reverse engineer what you would want to see if you were that person from your resume, or what you would want to hear if you were that person from your pitch, or what you would want to hear if you were that person from the comment you leave. I think that's the theme for this section. Put yourself in the other person's shoes, whoever you're trying to communicate with. That's the way you do it. And then active listening. Really, the only way to active listen is to pretend that you are that person, and then objectively analyze your offerings and your communication. So that's the communication part. The next skill that most people don't think they need, you're going to need it from day one almost, is adaptability, embracing the unexpected. So research is busy. If you're at a site, things are supposed to go the way they're supposed to go, the way it's written in the protocol. Patient is supposed to come to this visit, then they're supposed to do this, and then they're supposed to come to this visit, and then this is supposed to happen, and they have the next visit. That rarely occurs. What often happens is patients, who are human beings at the end of the day, go through life. Everyone goes through their own life, and life is messy. Life doesn't fit into a nice protocol and doesn't check boxes cleanly. And so patients go through this stuff, and they don't follow the protocol. And same thing with coordinators. Coordinators make mistakes. PIs make mistakes. Sponsors make mistakes. We have this as in a recent example as of yesterday. We have this study which has about a month left to enroll. We're a little bit behind because we've had a string of unexpected screen failures. And I'm telling my coordinator, in this case, Grecia, all hands on deck. You find patients, like we're going to increase our advertising on Patient Ace. We're going to get leads. I need you to get more shots on goal, meaning more patients screened, even if we screen for more until we randomize what we said we're going to randomize. So she found one. They came in yesterday. Well, it turns out the sponsor had a technical difficulties with their e-portals, and they didn't allow us to screen because they didn't allow us to use our paper consent. They insisted on using the electronic consent. And so my coordinator had to be adaptable because this patient wanted to do the study, but we couldn't get her in that day. So what she did, she pre-screened her so that the patient felt like it wasn't a waste of her time. She gave her a patient stipend, even though she didn't need to. I said, compensate her for the visit, make sure she understands what's going on, that she's going to come back. This is adaptability. And that sponsor also, they probably weren't expecting a technical glitch study-wide on one of their most important systems. So now what does that mean? This study just got delayed effectively by another week because it wasn't just our site that was affected. And now there's some project managers, probably from the vendor, probably from the sponsor, that are scrambling to fix this stuff. The FDA just released guidance on continuous quality review, continuous quality management. This is something that could have been prevented, honestly, with effective ways to combat, I guess, proactively the unknown. And this is what adaptability is all about, is you have a plan. Mike Tyson said it best, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Embrace the unexpected. So when something occurs that's unexpected, you got to figure out how to make that into a positive thing instead of just letting it affect you negatively. If you look closely, there's usually always a silver lining. In the case of this patient, we paid her for her time even though we didn't have to. And she at least will get an extra compensation out of it. And she at least got to see our clinic and meet the coordinator. And hopefully she's more comfortable to come in next week when the systems hopefully work again. And so be ready for the unexpected. The unexpected could also mean no notice whatsoever. Your company just laid off 20% of its staff, and you're one of them. And you may not even be one of them because you may be in that category not because you're not good. You might be in that category because you've been so good, but you've been one of the expensive ones. The ones that they have to cut costs. You didn't do anything to deserve that, but you need to now be adaptable and figure out a way to find your next opportunity. And you don't wait for your next opportunity, you make it happen. And part of being adaptable is being ready, being prepared for the worst that's to come. And this is why I love the philosophy of Stoicism, because it teaches you to focus only on what you can control. And you cannot control external events and circumstances, but you can control how you prepare for the inevitable, how you prepare for the unexpected, and your reactions to them. So don't be caught off guard. Your job is not secured. Your business is not secured. Nothing is secured. Be prepared. The next skill, number 3, the power of collaboration. So we kind of talked about this earlier. It's somewhat related to communication, but it's a little deeper. It's about teamwork and empathy, conflict resolution, and shared goals. So you're not solo. This is not a solo sport. This is a team sport. Even if you are working for yourself, like I am, your success in this industry is only as good as your network, and only as good as how you collaborate well with others. If you're not a team player, eventually you're not going to find ways. It's going to be very difficult for you to be successful in this space. I know a lot of people, I've worked closely with them. Some of them I've watched from afar. They're very talented. They have a lot of potential. They're super skilled, but they are horrible at teamwork and collaboration, almost to the point of like self-sabotage. And these are smart people. I mean, these are people with advanced degrees. So it's not like they don't understand these concepts. But somehow, when it's time to reflect on who you are and how you can improve, these people tend to think, no, it can't be me. It's got to be the other people. But then they repeat the same pattern throughout their career. I've seen this happen dozens of times, like firsthand. I've been there witnessing. It's kind of like watching the Titanic sink slowly. Like you can kind of see it, and when you've seen it before, you know how this movie ends. And all I'm trying to do is make sure that's never me. So it requires some humility to say, yeah, I'm not perfect. I need to change. I need to always look within. Just because things don't go my way doesn't mean it's the other person's fault. And being a team player is super important, but a lot of people have this air of superiority about themselves, and they think that they don't actually need to have teammates, or they'd rather be the one in charge and have support in place, and people need to follow them. But I don't care how high up you are in whatever hierarchy, whatever arbitrary hierarchy you put yourself in, you're going to need to collaborate with people as equal. And if you are actually in a position of leadership, you should know, or you're going to learn the hard way, real effective leadership is putting yourself in the position as a servant leader. And I've watched this firsthand. I hope I've seen enough to never be in that position. And that's always sticks in the back of my mind. So you've got to rely on other people. So many different personalities and viewpoints, disagreements can happen. Effective conflict resolution through listening, compromise, clear communication. Everyone needs to share the same goals. If people deviate from the shared mission of the organization, collaboration becomes impossible. So if you see that happening to yourself, back to skill set number 2, figure out how to be adaptable, because it's not going to last long. Even with a miracle, I don't think miracles happen in that regard. Skill set number 4, unexpected. Project management. I told you it's coming. Keeping things on track. So, multiple moving parts. This is a dynamic industry. There are constantly moving parts. Everything you do is a project. Even if you have one study you're working on, that's a project. If you are an entrepreneur, you've got multiple moving parts. But even if you're an employee working at a company, you're going to be in charge of projects, whether it's an entire study or whether it's a particular aspect of one study. Maybe you're a laboratory manager. Even if you're like a phlebotomist or something like what's considered a low rank, it's still project management. How do you keep things on track? And it's not just for corporate teams. It's for individuals too. Organizational skills is critical. I'm not an organized person. That is probably one of my weaknesses, actually. I'm not good at keeping spreadsheets. I have a physical checklist. I write it down, things I need to do, the most important things I need to do every day. But I compensate by not being organized with tools. And one of them, my inbox was a disaster, a complete disaster. Anyone who looked at my emails in the past, they would see like 300,000 unread messages across all my inboxes. They would very organized people would look like Ashley Margot. When I was with her, she's a co-founder of Latinos in Clinical Research and Save Our Sites. I was with her one day and she was looking at my email and she was like, I'm going to have a panic attack. I can't do this. how do you manage? And I told her I don't really manage. It's just I deal with it. So I found a tool that helps me with the email. It's called Spark AI. I'm not sponsored by them, but I realized email and organization is probably one of my weaknesses. So let me find a way to organize at least my inbox. And so Spark AI has been good because I can put things into different folders and it kind of helps with the AI. Yes, I could have done this manually, but I would have never done it. So I'm paying for something to kind of be done passively for me. And writing down things. I've been writing down a daily checklist since I started in this space. So at least I have something at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to look at and say, okay, at least the most important things, did I do it? No. Well, then it moves on to the next day's checklist. Eventually you get things done or you just start ignoring them. Prioritization as well. Not all tasks are created equal. Knowing which tasks are urgent and which can wait helps prevent burnout. So I forget who it was. I think one of the presidents from the past, I don't know who, they had this quadrant of urgent and important. And they had like you draw this quadrant and you put urgent on the top and important on the side. And you focus on, this is to help prioritize. If something is urgent and important, you prioritize on that first. If something's not urgent, not important, you prioritize that last or you delegate that to someone. And then there's the two things in between, which is urgent, not important, or important, not urgent. And you can decide which one you want to do. But at least you can eliminate like 25% of the things right away by what's not urgent and not important. And you know which 25% of the things to focus on immediately before you do anything else, which is urgent and important. Yes, this is arbitrary. Yes, it ultimately means you have to assign a valence to your tasks. But who better to do that than you? Nobody knows your life and your responsibilities better than you. So you should be doing it. And then resource management, managing budgets if you're in that role as an entrepreneur. But if you're not, your most important resource, even if you are an entrepreneur, is your time. How are you managing your time? And I think prioritization is key, and also having clear timelines and milestones. So you're going to get milestones and timelines if you work for someone else. But even if you don't work for someone else, or even if you do, you need to keep yourself accountable with things. Finally, everything about data in this industry. So the next skill is how to make sense of all the data. Complex data, narratives. In the age of AI, you can get data on everything. And in research, this is probably a good segue into our next video, the technological trends in this space. So it's a little bit of a cliffhanger for the next podcast. Data is everything. Data is going to, CRAs are held to metrics, how many days on site. Sites are held on metrics, how long till you answer queries, how long until you got your first patient in. The first step for you is to understand what metrics are most important for what you do. Figure out what those KPIs are. KPI, key performance indicator. Some of your employers are going to tell you outright. If you don't know what your KPIs are and how you're being measured, ask your boss, ask your manager. If you are the boss and the manager, you need to start developing KPIs. For me, as a site director and a site owner, my most important KPI at my site is how many patients we've had that week, how many patient visits we've had that week. And then every coordinator has their own KPIs as to productivity. How many patients did you see this week? And if you didn't hit your goal, what is the rationale? Why? Well, I was behind on data queries. Okay, well, then that becomes priority. Get that caught up, and then next week, you should overcompensate for what you missed out this week. And so, as long as you're clear in your communications with your key performance indicators, and you can track everything these days. We use Creo. They're a sponsor of the podcast. Creo has a CTMS. It shows me my most important KPIs, which is visits, and also shows me who did them at my site. You can go even further down, like revenue per coordinator per day. I don't get into those kind of things. I just go visits per week. I keep things simple. And whatever it is, however you want to do it, you do it. Just understand that metrics are being collected or can be collected for everything. And there's no way you can improve something unless you know where you stand as far as the metrics. So you can't improve something until you track it. They tell you this when you're trying to lose weight. They tell you this when you're trying to spend your money better. They tell you this for everything. So in your career, you should also have these metrics. You don't know how you can improve unless you start tracking things. These days, no matter what you do, you can start tracking and keeping even personal key performance indicators for yourself. Because remember, you, even if you're working for someone else, are in the business of you, and you should hold yourself to higher standards. If you're watching or listening to this podcast, you already are. So start thinking about ways that you can track and use key performance indicators for yourself. And this is a perfect segue for next week's video / podcast on technology trends 2025 and beyond in clinical research. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye. Hey, if you guys like that kind of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Stay tuned for more videos.